I'll come over here because nobody can see me remotely. So yeah, can someone give a thumbs up whether you hear us? Okay, great, perfect. So yeah, welcome everyone. Welcome, Matt. It's my great pleasure to welcome you and to introduce you. I wrote a tiny bit here, some of it from your CV. So you did your PhD, Matt did his PhD in computer science at the University of British Columbia, and then moved to the US to work in industry research for several years, first as a postdoctoral researcher at Microsoft Research in Seattle, and then later as lead research staff member at Tableau Research, also in Seattle, until very recently, because just a few months ago, Matt started a position back in academia, not far from here at the University of Waterloo, where he's now an assistant professor. So welcome back to Canada, Matt. And on a personal note, I'm also really happy that you're here. We met many years ago during our PhDs,
volunteering.
being student volunteers, I think at CHI. So I think that always bonds people together, and we've kind of
met Bond too.
Oh yeah, and David, who's somewhere on the call, I think. So yeah, since then, kind of like our paths crossed every now and again, at conferences and online and in person. So yeah, it's great to have you visit here. For everyone who doesn't know Matt, his research is in human-computer interaction with a particular interest in data visualization. And in his own words, he designs, implements, and evaluates new ways to communicate and collaborate around data. So I think it couldn't be more fitting to have you visit the HCI and visualization team here at Autodesk. And also a bit of a recognition. Your work has been recognized with Best Paper Awards at IEEE Viz, ACM WIST, and I think just last year you got the kind of like 10-year Impact Award at WIST, which is called at Viz, which is called Test of Time Award. So that's I didn't actually know that until I looked it up. So it's yeah, congratulations. But yeah, without further ado, I'll hand it over to you. We're going to have a presentation and then also some Q&A afterwards.
Excellent. All right. Thanks, Fred. Yeah, super glad to be here again. I was mentioning to a few of you that I was last here pre-pandemic, so it seems a long time ago. But glad to be back. As Frederick mentioned, I just recently came back to Ontario after a long absence. I grew up in Ontario. I went to Queen's University as an undergrad and then been on the West Coast for 15 years. So it's nice to be back now here. So as Frederick mentioned, I until recently was at Tableau Research in Seattle, helping people see and understand data as part of the business intelligence world. And so most of the stuff I'm going to be speaking about today is coming from that era. I've only been at Waterloo a couple months, but at the end of the talk, I'll talk about where I'm going next and what I'm interested in. But this is what I care about. Came from cognitive science into HCI and then information visualization is where I've been spending most of my time the past 10 years or so. I'll talk about a few things today, this story of the last several years of my life in terms of research, starting from when I was at Microsoft Research. I was interested in a lot of InfoVis beyond the desktop, working with representations of data on phones, on tablets, on large displays. And that led me to Tableau after that. And I'll talk about a couple of Tableau projects today, and then where this work is leading now that I'm in a faculty role and thinking beyond the realm of business intelligence. At any point, you can interrupt me as well. I'll also mention this talk is a repurposed talk that I gave earlier this year at the Tableau conference. So initially, some of this work was being shown to our customers at a customer conference. So you'll see a little bit of how we talk about research to our customer, how I talk about research to the customer community of Tableau. So when I was at Microsoft, I did a fair bit of projects on mobile, small displays, phones, working with both interaction design and how to represent data in small displays. Also some pen and touch technology on Surface or easel displays. And that was what I was interested in the last time I was here. So maybe some of that work I think I spoke about back in 2019, the last time I visited. And when I joined Tableau in 2019, most people know Tableau as a business intelligence desktop product for helping people understand their sales, marketing, customer service, so just tabular data. But they also had a suite of non-desktop products as well. And that's what one of the things that attracted me to work with them is that in 2015, they had an iPhone application that they launched then to get their business intelligence data in literal hands of customers. And then also for a limited period, they also had this iPad app that really capitalized on multi-touch interaction back in 2015 called Visible. No longer exists, sadly, but it had a really rich interaction vocabulary on the tablet. So these are a couple of the projects that attracted me to Tableau. And when I joined in 2019, I was interested in taking some of the larger display, touchscreen, pen and touch technology that I was thinking about at Microsoft and thinking about contexts like this. How do people present data in rooms like we're in right now? How do people make persuasive and compelling presentations in front of large displays of data? Like a lot of people in the visualization community, I was, and some people who are familiar with that here will be familiar with the work of Hans Rosling. This guy was a legendary presenter. He was a public health expert. He would give these really amazing talks in front of animated data visualization software, especially as early as the 2006 TED conference, which he'd be really captivating to watch. He'd be using his gestural cues. He'd be directing people's attention with his arms. He'd be very animated. And I wanted to see, like, what could we do with interactive visualization software in shared spaces where the speaker and audience are co-located. As I mentioned, I was also coming from Microsoft, and I was inspired by some of the work that had been done there as well by Rubaiyat, Function, and Greg about how do we give persuasive presentations with pen and touch technology on large displays in a room like this. Of course, this was 2019, and all of these dreams and hopes and aspirations of mine came to a grinding halt in March 2020, where I could not do large display technology interaction design anymore, for at least for a while. So I had to pivot, and where did I pivot to? It was, well, realizing where are people meeting and talking about data in 2020. It was how do people do this effectively over teleconference situations. And that's what led me to this project with my then colleague, Robert Casara, who was at Tableau at the time with me. And we did this project that we published at Viz 2021, and it was published in the journal shortly after. It was an interview study with Tableau's customers about how do people take their business intelligence data and then give a compelling presentation about that data to either their customers or their stakeholders, their executives, or their peers. And so we talked to a cross-section of our customers, both internal and external. We had, at our customer conference, which was entirely virtual that year, we had these brain dates with our customers where we spent half an hour with them just talking about their pain points and their experiences. So our specific focus is how do you present data to anyone really in your organization? And as part of this project, we got a very clear sense early on that people hated using slideware, but they also hated using Tableau and business intelligence software to present data. They were both bad for different reasons. If they were using PowerPoint or slides, they had to basically screenshot their visualizations and their dashboards from a system like Tableau, bring it into into a slide presentation, or they had to painstakingly recreate it in PowerPoint. And it was just a tedious process, and if they ever had to edit those slides again, they'd have to go do the process over again. But at the same time, using a business intelligence software like Tableau to present their data was also not ideal because it was distracting. It had the visual affordances of this is an analysis tool, not a presentation tool, and their audiences wouldn't necessarily know where to look. So it would look a lot like this. And this is an ideal case of me giving a presentation over Google Meet, where you have me over on the side as a thumbnail, and I'm giving a presentation using a Tableau workbook. I might be having some speaking points. I could use annotations and some other graphical cues to direct your attention, but it's not the same as me being in the room, like Hans Rosling was at his TED Talks, and being able to walk over to this display, frame exactly what I'm pointing at, and direct your attention. So there's a lot of missed human connection that wasn't being transferred to this digital medium of Zoom. So in this paper, in addition to interviewing people, we gave a few different design probe ideas just to see what people would respond to. One was taking the idea of a secondary display, like you have in PowerPoint or any other slideware. Like, what do you have as presenter tools when you're presenting data? Like, what do you take out of a dashboard and put it on your own personal display, and what do you share with your audience? So we had some prototypes to that effect to get responses. But the other one I wanted to bring up was this one that incorporated video, in which it was an asynchronous experience where you have a video playing inside an embedded part of a dashboard that would trigger different events in the dashboard as you watch the video. So if you wanted to discuss a specific point in your data story or a particular insight, at that point in the video, it would change what's happening in the displays. Maybe the annotations would change. Maybe the views would swap out. And we showed this to our interviewees, and by and large, people hated it actually, because it meant that they had to, in addition to build a dashboard, they also had to become video editors. And the idea of like having this asynchronous video presentation didn't resonate with everyone. But nevertheless, there's something about the video combination with data that I still wanted to stick with and try a different variant of this going forward. So it was back to the drawing board and back to synchronous experiences where you didn't have to be a video editor in addition to preparing a presentation. So this leads me to talk about one of the two big projects that I want to speak about today, which was this project called Tableau Gestures, or augmented webcam video for presenting data. And this started as a research intern project and then spun out into a internal project that got shown at Tableau Conference 2023 last year. So the inspiration for this, again, came back to effective ways of presenting data in person and how we replicate this experience over Zoom or over any other teleconference situation. Certainly, not everyone has a large display at home, and when they're presenting remotely, you can't walk across a room and hope that people follow you. But I was curious, like, what could we take away from those experiences from either Hans Rosling's TED Talks or from what journalists were doing at the time? So this is a reporter for ABC News in Australia, Casey Briggs, who was giving his pandemic reports in front of a large touchscreen display, and they were like really captivating presentations of showing, in this case, case count trends. Of course, not everyone has a large touchscreen display at home either, so I was thinking about what are some low-cost ways to replicate aspects of this experience where you can direct your audience's attention like you would in person over a teleconference. Here's another example. This is Sky News, Ed Conway in the UK, who is doing election reporting. He's controlling the visualization behind him where he has an iPad to control it, but then he's also doing these large sweeping gestures that are largely performative, but they help show the transition of, in this case, electoral results from a map to a different type of chart. So I was taking a lot of inspiration from what journalists were doing and broadcasters were doing, and hoping that there was some way that I could reproduce that experience. And so this is an early prototype from 2021, which I'm using a cheap green screen that I bought for $100, but then I also incorporated a pose recognition model to control aspects of this visualization that's composited behind me on the green screen. So in this case, it's an animated dynamic scatter plot, a lot like some of the charts that Hans Rosling would show in his public health presentations. In fact, it's the same data here, but different poses I undertake here control different aspects of the chart, whether it's highlighting a region of the display or it's triggering reference lines or reference values or animation in this case. Unfortunately, this too wasn't very satisfying, even as a presenter. I had to look at a reference display. I am not a trained meteorologist or TV broadcaster, so this was really hard for me to orchestrate. The pose recognition model I was using was also really brittle. I had to stand in a specific place, even though I'd done a lot of training inputs. It was very sensitive to lighting. It was unnatural because you see I'm looking at the reference display and my poses are very rigid. It just seems really unnatural. So I didn't even put this in front of other people to try. But there were some aspects of it that I did still nevertheless like. Being able to control data with my hands seemed like an interesting trajectory to continue on, even though this particular setup didn't really work. And this was a short work that was presented at Information Plus back in 2021 when I was still thinking about what to do next year. Another piece of inspiration after this came from this BBC documentary that, again, Hans Rosling, the public health expert, recorded back in 2010. And this is just a short little animation from that recording. It's about a 10-minute long documentary, and if you haven't seen it, it's really interesting to watch. He's in this empty warehouse, and composited in the foreground of the video is this semi-transparent data visualization that he stands behind, and his gestures make it seem as though he's controlling the animation. In this case, it's the progression of lifespan and income over the course of 200 years. This was 2010, though. This was all done in post-processing. This was all composited afterward. Some very careful choreography on his part, and he also had a BBC production team behind him working on this. But in 2021, I was curious, could we do this now with the technology at our disposal live for a teleconference call? And could we adopt this situation where you put the visualization in the foreground, and would it be more natural than having it composited behind you? So this is Brian Hall, who was an intern that worked with me in late 2021 and 2022 from the University of Michigan. He's since graduated and now works as a data engineer for Century in Wisconsin. But at the time, he worked with me to pilot some of the technology in this eventual prototype. Here he is in a Google Meet call, working with a real-time hand tracking model called MediaPipe. It's maintained by Google. But it has a real-time skeleton tracking and face tracking as well. And it's just piloting the experience of what could you do if you had a visualization in the foreground of your video or over your shoulder like this, kind of like a news broadcaster sitting at a desk. And could this make for a compelling experience when presenting data to your remote audience? So here I'll show that was 2021. I will show a demonstration of what it looked like earlier this year at the Tableau conference.
So hopefully you're seeing me in full screen now with some markers tracking where my fingers are. And you're seeing our familiar Tableau Sparkle.
A bit delayed video. I don't know if that's...
Hopefully you're seeing me in full screen now with some markers tracking where my fingers are. And you're seeing our familiar Tableau Sparkle over here on the side. And I just revealed some data fields in this data set. They all pertain to global poverty trends. So I'm going to pull out a country into this drop zone here. And I have a interactive spinnable globe here. And I'll also drag a cluster onto this map. And so what I've done is just categorically clustered some of these countries together ahead of time. And the colors represent how similar they are to one another in terms of how their poverty trends manifest over time. Now, while a globe like this allows me to set like a familiar spatial context and draw your attention to places like larger places on the map, it's harder for me to direct your attention to smaller targets, to say if I wanted to point at Switzerland, for instance. So one of the things we've added this year to Tableau Gestures is the ability to swap out one viz for another. So snap here and replace the viz with a tile map, which is now going to give all the countries the same size, but they're going to retain their relative spatial position on the map. So the other thing we've added is be able to zoom in. So let's now zoom in to North America and Europe. And now
You're getting the remix.
Easily point to places that were pretty small before on the globe, like Switzerland. Another thing we've added this year, and I'll add a line chart to show it, is some of the interaction around temporal data. So I've just drawn a line chart that has the average poverty rate for all these countries shown in the tile map. I'll also similarly add the cluster information to this line chart, so I want a separate line for each of the three clusters represented in the tile map above. And now when I point at a country on the tile map, I actually see it highlighted in the line chart as well. So just as I was able to zoom in before on the map, I'm also able to zoom in time as well, like being able to zoom in this period between 2005 and 2010. Now I'm able to point out like specific trends in this period, like how Latvia has this up and down poverty rate over the course of this 5 years. Or similarly, I can pan to the next 5 years and show how its neighbor, Estonia, in the course of just 1 year, jumped its poverty rate almost 5%. And just as I was able to zoom in, I'm also able to zoom out. So some new vizzes, some new functionalities, and new interactions added to Tableau Gestures since it was first shown last year. And that's just a brief glimpse of what is possible with this medium. All right, now.
Okay. So all this is from the basis for this work was in this paper that was published at WIST 2022 by Brian, Lynn, and myself, and it received honorable mention there that year, in which we initially demonstrated this design space of bringing visualizations into the foreground of your video and interacting with it in multiple different ways, like combining data points, highlighting different parts of different chart types, making visual comparisons, like in this case here, we can pull pieces out of a chart and draw them next to each other. And since this paper, it got shown to our customers at Tableau's conference 2023, and then again this past year with more different chart types and different interaction designs added to this space. We've also, from the research side, continued working on different aspects of it. So this is my colleague, my former colleague, Arjun Srinivasan, who's now at Databricks, who worked with me to add voice interaction to this as well, with the additional challenge that you want to make these voice commands natural in the course of a presentation. So we're trying to pick up on implicit directives in a narrative to change aspects of the visualization being shown in the foreground as well. There's a short video here too, but hopefully the lag isn't as bad as before. We'll see.
Right off the bat, we can see that Southeast and Mid-Atlantic have a higher number of schools than the other regions. So let's go ahead and drill down into the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast regions to learn more about the schools here. Now, at this point, I'm a little curious to see what the distribution of different school types in these densely populated regions is. So to do that, maybe what we can do is color these points based on the school type that they have. And we can see immediately that, you know, there's a bit of a distribution of public.
So get the sense there that he's using a mix of gestures and speech commands to update the visualization and direct attention with the gestures, but then make changes to the chart that have no obvious gestural command using voice. Most recently, okay, there we go. Most recently, though, at ISS this year, so with my new colleagues at the University of Waterloo, we continued a different direction of this work with an entirely different technology stack to imagine what is the authoring experience of this like, understanding what are some of the conventions that we can take from PowerPoint or take from business intelligence tools and bring it into a system here to actually allow you to interact, to author one of these presentations in a drag and drop way. So again, there's a brief video that goes with this, but this example here is an interface that allows you to set scenes. It allows you to drag in visualization widgets and gestural widgets and place them in very specific locations so you don't get false pauses. You know exactly where you need to make those gestures. The other key difference between this work and what had come before is now we also have the notion of a presenter view and an audience view. So the presenter view has rich gestural feedback. The audience view doesn't get any of that. They just get you pointing to where you're supposed to be looking. So I think, again, apologies if the videos, this is streaming from YouTube, but hopefully
our research introduces VisConductor, a solution that bridges this gap. Allowing presenters to harness the potency of animated data visualizations overlaid on their webcam feed and explaining data using gestural manipulation. VisConductor allows presenters to author animated data visualizations and the gestural interactions used to highlight important chart elements, control animation playback, and foreshadow animations. Presenters are able to use these gestures to direct their audience attention, fostering a deeper connection and ensuring the data's story is effectively conveyed. John is a public health worker preparing for a presentation on the global effects of war on finance. Our research introduces VisConductor, a solution.
There we go. So that work was another example of another direction to push in, especially at bringing in animated data visualization. We were specifically looking at animated scatter plots and bar chart races in that work, see what gestures we can then use to control those aspects of a visualization, whereas our previous projects were static charts. Okay, so in the next little bit here, I'll talk about what I've been working on up until my move to Waterloo a couple months ago, which was Tableau for visionOS. One of Tableau's big partners and customers was Apple, and they had seen our Tableau Gestures demo a couple of times, and they were interested in partnering with us to build a visionOS experience with Tableau, and so the research team stepped in to do some of that work. So I'll show just a brief little glimpse of what this looked like. And this was shown at the Tableau conference earlier this year to Tableau customers in a presentation.
I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce all of you here today.
I think actually
I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce all of you here.
I might have this video locally, so let's see if I can. Yeah, this one.
I am absolutely thrilled to introduce all here today to Tableau for visionOS. Upon opening the app, you simply need to look and tap your fingers together to control it. Beautiful visualizations will float before you, with familiar controls for mark selection and operations like sorting. And just as in Tableau, switching to another visualization can offer another perspective on your data. With a line chart, you can gesture to scroll through time. It's with geospatial data, however, that our app really shines, with beautiful and immersive 3D globe visualizations, for which we offer several alternative ways to represent values, from core plus fills to 3D spikes emanating from the globe. Changing data fields on a globe is similarly easy and immediate, such as by swapping out the total CO2 emission values here for average population values. And if you want to see multiple visualizations and fields together, you can do so with a configurable dashboard. And just as you would in Tableau Desktop, you'll have familiar linking and brushing between visualizations in your dashboards.
All right. It didn't seem like the video was, and that was locally, so there's something else going on with video playback over.
Might be the Zoom.
That's okay. Okay. Can I get out of? I'm trapped in the YouTube playback. Oh, that's why.
I am absolutely.
There we go. So some key things we wanted to bring into this experience for visionOS was to enable some of the basic things that that people could do in the desktop or the tablet application, not full-on dashboard authoring or data set curation or all of those data loading and cleaning operations that you would associate with business intelligence software, but at least sort of the end executive experience, understanding your measure values and comparing them over time, and then seeing them in multiple different ways, whether that's bar chart, temporal data on a line chart, or an immersive globe experience. And being able to go between multiple views, like in a dashboard experience, just distributed the views spatially. So yeah, we showed this earlier this year at the Tableau conference. And another key thing that I want to bring up here was some key differences between these two projects, because there's certainly some similarities and differences between the two. Obviously, the medium is one, but then these two different use cases. One was really about like guided storytelling and presentation, like me directing your attention. And the other one has to be more of a curated experience where you in advance create a data set and you create a dashboard application that you would then hand off to an executive or decision maker to then have a little bit of freedom in terms of how they explore their data set, but not a full range of what you might get from a desktop application. Of course, the difference here was in how we control these interactions, how we control these interfaces as well. So with Tableau Gestures, we were doing hand gestures that were both simultaneously directing your attention, but also controlling the visualizations. Whereas in the visionOS experience, it was all done with gaze and tap, as is common in a lot of these visionOS experiences. The other big difference between these two projects was that the first one was really ideal for demoing virtually and demoing live. The second one, very difficult to capture in a demo because it's a first-person perspective, as maybe you've experienced trying to capture first-person experiences from other headsets. The demo that you saw there, where there was a different perspective, we had to use two Vision Pros and record the same experience from two different perspectives and then edit it in video after the fact, but just difficult to capture. Another interesting thing we did was that we brought this to the show floor of the Tableau conference this year and actually ran a user study with Tableau customers in the exhibition hall of our conference, where they got to try out this experience and give us feedback on both the usability, but also on potential use cases. And this is what reinstated for us or reinforced the idea that this is meant for like an executive experience. So you would give this to your executive to do a little bit of exploration, but not a whole lot of exploration in a focused event, maybe like 10 to 15 minutes experience where they can explore their data on some regular cadence. But certainly not something that you would be spending your entire day in. We did release it. It's in the Tableau test flight. So it's on visionOS. If you have a Vision Pro, you can actually try it out. So it's still being maintained. So in the last little bit of the talk, I'm going to talk about what's going on now in my life and what's going on forward, what I'm interested in now that I'm in a more academic role, and broadening the scope of what I'm interested in beyond business intelligence data, which was the bread and butter of Tableau. More broadly, though, about data-rich communication and collaboration in general, irrespective of what the application domain is. So earlier this year, I was fortunate to host a 4-day-long seminar meeting in Japan with a team of international organizers about this very topic, multimodal interaction for synchronous activities like presentation, collaboration, and education where you have a remote audience. We brought together an interesting cross-section of communities at this event. There was about 30 people involved. Some of them were attending remotely, but we had people from the visualization community and those from the immersive analytics sub-community within that are bringing AR and VR and visualization together. Also, a few people that are more closely aligned with the CSCW community and from the ISS and Surfaces and Spaces community. Just people that are interested in collaboration and data experiences and education experiences all together in one room for 4 days to better understand what are some of the emerging challenges in this space. And that's largely what's guiding a lot of my current research going forward now that I'm here in academia. So as I mentioned, there's a good number of people there who are representing the immersive analytics world. In the past few years, we've seen a couple different really good comprehensive papers like the Immersive Analytics Design Space paper by David Sappho and colleagues, or there's this paper, Grand Challenges in Immersive Analytics from a few years ago from Kai. And all of these challenges in this design space, there is certainly some consideration now about collaboration. A lot of the projects around collaboration in immersive analytics have been co-located collaboration. And I'm thinking now about ones in which you have a hybrid or remote setup, and there's device asymmetry and there's role asymmetry as well, presenter and audience being one example of role asymmetry. And having been immersed in the Apple developer ecosystem for the past year, I'm interested in what's possible now with some of their affordances in their visionOS developer environment for bringing multiple remote collaborators together, whether they're wearing a headset or not. Thus far, there aren't a lot of analytics or data-rich, data-intensive visualization experiences in this ecosystem, but there's certainly some precedents here of where you might have multiple remote companions working together in a space and independently controlling a shared experience together, like this whiteboard experience. So I'm interested in that cross-section of spaces between the existing immersive analytics world and what's possible now in some of these remote collaboration environments in various headset development stacks. So some of the challenges that this team of people came to recognize as part of the seminar and what we're currently working on writing a challenges paper on are these 4 types of challenges having to do with data-rich communication and collaboration. And they don't require that you're using head-mounted displays, but that's certainly a big part of the discussion as well. What can we do with the technology and tools and techniques that are emerging now to accommodate this type of collaboration around data assets? What are some of the social technical challenges like accessibility, inclusivity, role diversity, as I mentioned a couple minutes ago? A number of people in this community are also simultaneously interested in what's possible now with generative agents helping people collaborate, and how can those generative agents work specifically in these scenarios where there's some data assets at the center of that collaboration. And then the big uncertain question is, how do you evaluate these experiences in a compelling way that convince the community that these experiences are worth investing in, and that people should invest in them, or that reviewers should acknowledge the rigor that goes into these experiences and evaluating them? So as I mentioned at the top, I've been now in my professor role now for just about 3 months or so. So these are some of the questions that I'm thinking about. Certainly those challenges are top of mind, but also I've distilled it into sort of these 3 themes that I'm currently looking to hire students in. So whether that's undergraduates or I'm in the math faculty, so Master of Math students, essentially Master of Science students and PhD students to start the next year. So if you know of anyone that is looking for research graduate positions, do send them my way. So whether that is multimodal information, rich conversations on across different existing communication platforms, or spatial computing experiences where you're collaborating around data, whether that's synchronous or, in the last case here, asynchronous experiences where you might have a data asset that or an immersive experience that you can then experience asynchronously from the designer. So with that, I'll cap it here and open up to a few minutes for questions and comments. I think we have this space until the Q2, right? So
Yeah, we got about 7 minutes for questions.
So thanks for having me again. It's great to be back here and great to be back in Ontario, but also nice to visit Autodesk again. So thanks, Frederick, for hosting me. And I'll open it up there for conversation.
Thank you very much. We got about 6-7 minutes for questions. Anyone in the room or remote got a question? Otherwise, I'll just start. So you were talking at the beginning when you had that, you said that, I can't quite remember what adjective you used, but the green screen setup.
Yeah.
And you found it really like difficult to look at the reference, but also gesture.
Yeah.
Like when you're with all the other, the Tableau project you were talking about, like it also looked like you just kind of like almost in front of a green screen doing exactly the same thing. So how did that experience of using it in front of your green screen at home differ from doing mid-air gestures, controlling data later on?
Yeah, the one big difference between the two is with the content or the visualization assets in the foreground, it made it a lot easier to just imagine it as a plane of glass in front of you rather than something you had to guess where your hands were. The other difference is that the reference monitor is just a mirror directly in front of you. So I have my webcam on the top of the monitors here, and it's just a mirror reflection of what I'm seeing. So unlike in Zoom calls where you're seeing the mirror, the non-mirrored view of you, this purposefully mirrors it so that exactly where you're looking in the mirrored view is exactly where your hand is. It's a perfect mirror experience. And so just imagine that there's a glass there and that the visualizations are superimposed in the glass makes it a lot easier. There's no awkward hand-eye coordination or bodily awareness that's required. That was true of the green composite experience.
Great, thanks. I think we got a question from Chian, who's remote.
Actually, I also realized my question might be also largely overlap with what you asked, Frederick, and also what David was trying to ask. So I think it's also nice to see like you provide a comparison actually between the webcam and also the visionOS experience. I was a bit curious, like how you would rate about, for example, people trying to select something or trying to do more, precise manipulation with those two experiences. Like one, of course, like is right in front of you, and maybe like in visionOS, if the target is too far away, you still have to reach out a little bit, right? Or you have to do some remote selection. Versus the other one, I think it's not directly, but it's like just on the monitor, and as you see, as if it's in front of you, but like how you rate like influence about the precision and also the fatigue and how they're selected.
Yeah, those are all good questions. So with the Tableau Gestures experience with things are in front of you, we don't anticipate that people are going to be gesturing and manipulating content for the entire duration of a presentation. That it would be selective experiences throughout, so that hopefully there's no fatigue by just by having to occasionally reach for things in the display in front of you during the course of your presentation. I know personally for me, I'm often like using my hands as I speak, so I want to make sure that it would be comfortable that you're only reaching within the space in front of you. I've tried it with standing at different distances from the display as well, but hopefully you're not going to have to reach for way across the display. One thing that made it easier, which was true in the most recent project at ISS, VisConductor, that was built in collaboration with the student and Gian at University of Waterloo was that feedback that we give now. So in the presenter view, you get a lot more gestural feedback because you know exactly where you placed a gestural widget on your display. And that made a big difference with respect to precision. You can pick out like a small cluster of data points in a scatter plot, for instance, or a inflection point in a line graph, or a single bar in a bar chart, because you knew exactly where to trigger that response, and you get the visual feedback that you've triggered it successfully. Whereas previously, there was a kind of a limitation to how many data points you could feasibly grasp in a display. We were purposefully also making sure that the data points or the visualizations were representative of the ones that people would put on slides. So they wouldn't have that many data points anyway. In the low hundreds, you wouldn't put like a scatter plot with thousands of data points on a slide. You'd probably put some sort of density map or some aggregated form of visualization, maybe a heat map or a tile map instead, and you use those to grasp things. A good example of that is actually in the globe experience that I showed briefly, where manipulating a globe with lots of small countries can be really challenging, but turning it into a tile map where every country is now the same size, but that maintains their relative spatial position with each other, makes it a lot easier to reach out and grab one or select one. The comparison, though, getting back to the comparison between the visionOS experience and the webcam experience, yeah, they're entirely different interaction modalities as well. It takes getting used to interacting and pointing with your eyes, which was a different experience than working with your hands as it was before. It'd be interesting now to revisit some of that work, the Tableau Gestures work, and see what you could do with your eyes as a presenter. Could you control it similarly than you do in visionOS? Because you can make some pretty precise selections with your eyes and with pinching. You saw at that one point where there was a 3D globe in front of me with spikes emanating from it. It's actually pretty easy to select any country on the planet, any one of those little spikes emanating or a disk emanating from the globe, just with gaze precision. Surprisingly easy, I found. So it takes some getting used to, but the difference there, yeah, is certainly interesting to contrast the two, especially for people that have tried both experiences. And we did have some customers that have tried both. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we are at time, but I think maybe so if people need to draw for these, feel free to leave. But I also want to, John had his hand raised, so
my question's probably too long for running out of time.
Maybe a good point to connect afterwards.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Hey, Matt.
Certainly, John. Feel free to reach out.
Great talk.
Well, let's thank Matt again.
Thanks.
And yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thanks for hosting again. Apologies for the weird lag in the video there too.
I think that was also apologies from our side.